everyone. Welcome to today's Sound and Movement panel. My name is Laura Sirikul. I'm an entertainment reporter, critic, and journalist. I'm so excited to speak with these creatives about their projects and how sound and movement play in a huge role into these projects. So please join me in welcoming the virtual stage. Stunt coordinator for Stranger Things, Jahnel Curfman. Second unit director and supervising stunt coordinator, Hiro Koda. Hello, supervising sound editor for Tron Aries, Tormod Ringnes, songwriter, music producer for K-pop Demon Hunters, Daniel Rojas, three-time Emmy-winning filmmaker, Vincent Kardasik.
I think every story needs a soundtrack, and the more intense the story is, the more subtle the sound should be. Um, at the beginning of my career, I was really focused on cinematography, getting the perfect image and dropping some music on top of it. And I think I was under it. I didn't took like in consideration how powerful sound design and ambience could be. Nowadays, I always start with one question: what emotion do I want the audience to feel? And how can I translate that mixing sound and picture? And sometimes the image is so strong, you just need like some music to underline it, and sometimes you need some design to push the intensity to make the movement feel more physical, more real. And nowadays, like whatever I shoot and whatever the format, I always try to connect the original sound of the place. I mean, the atmosphere, the background noise, and even if I don't use it in the final cut, it guides all my sound choices, I would say. Like for me, sound and movement are always working together to serve emotion, and that, that's my main research, I would say, when I'm working with sound and audio.
For me, because my background is in dance and movement and sound and song go very much hand in hand, I think that even though for us when we choreograph and we're designing the action, we're just designing it. The sound all comes later, right? So we see what we have put down and sometimes we'll see a rough cut, but it really doesn't all come alive on the screen until you have, it's like Vincent said, that it's that emotion, like it helps like build and layer on the story that you're trying to tell. And for us, we really do try and move a story forward through the movement, and you really can't do that without the beautiful build of music and sound and all those little subtleties that sometimes you don't even realize are there.
I grew up in martial arts my whole life. I traveled all over the world competing with martial arts, and I did martial arts to music, and that was something that was really big in my time when I was competing. So music's always been a big part of everything that I do. So as we're putting, I mean, when I shoot my previs for any action that we're shooting, I'll shoot a full previs, and then once I'm finished putting all that together, all that is in our heads thinking about how the music and sound effects, everything that gets put in. I put that in for my previs. It's not what ends up being the ultimate ending, but it gives us a good idea of how everything is working and if it's all flowing well and the rhythms are all moving well and working for us.
Yeah, I mean, my job mostly is precisely that, is to musicalize movement in some ways. Not always, kind of like what Vincent was saying in a way. Many times, minimal is what you need to do. but that doesn't make it any easier, because when you have less elements, you have to be more selective on what you actually have. You know, it's like when you do a recipe that only has a few ingredients, you have to be very intentional with that. In my world of scoring, is two different things. Sometimes, for example, on live action projects, we come in later, more in post production, so we are musicalizing the movement itself. Like if it's an action scene or a horror movie where you have to be very careful with when to come in, when to come out. That usually happens in post to existing picture. And then on the other side, projects that are animation or musicals, like K-pop Demon Hunters, it's a little bit the reverse process. A lot of times the music comes before the movement, but informs what's going to happen. So it's still a collaboration, but we come in a lot earlier, and what we do kind of influences more on the movement and not the other way around. So it really depends on each project.
When I come to my work, I often start, of course, I often work close with the director, so we start already planning the scene when we are in like pre-planning or and when we like read the script. But for me, it's like finding out the pace and finding out the rhythm, and then the big collaboration is with the editor, of course, when we get in the post. But you need to have some kind of rhythm, and especially like when we did Tron now, that's so many fighting scenes that has to be choreographed, great, kind of have this great pace, and so that has to be planned like from the day one. And often we work on scenes that are not complete, so we like fighting, and we like on Tron with discs that not exist, so we need to do a collaboration from the very beginning, and then with the music. And often we have a sense of what kind of music we want to use, or at least what kind of tempo, so we can send it to on set, so you can have a listen and then you can try it. And it's a big collaboration. And for me, it's so important that the motion and the stunts and everything are so well planned, because then it's so much easier to get everything in a good spot, good way when we start editing. And the sad thing is that I can actually with sound ruin lots of good work that's been done on set if I'm not do it right way and with a good sense of rhythm.
No, we don't. It'd be interesting to do that ahead of time. The Duffer Brothers have a huge like playlist of music, and they sort of, I mean, the rhythm like sort of sets the tone, like it sets the tone of the action that's visually created by all the movement that we do, that we put together. And they just have like a whole playlist, and they play, like if we're doing an action, there's no dialogue, even if there is dialogue, sometimes they do, but they play music out loud just to kind of get the tone going and how everything is going to feel. So it helps us with how we're going to kind of choreograph everything and put it together. And like I said, I mean, with my previs, when I shoot prior to during prep, I'll put it all to music, put the sound effects in. I even put visual effects in to sort of present back so that they can see everything that we have planned for the day. It also helps me for when I'm shooting second unit, because then I just shoot my previs. It becomes a visual blueprint of what we're going to shoot for the day. But yeah, I mean, that would be an interesting way to go about it, is to get with music and do it. But we never do get a chance to go and collaborate with them first.
Oh yeah, definitely. This Tron is like iconic when it comes to fight scenes. So we have that in the previous films as well, and all these movements, and that's kind of so important to get that right and get some because there is especially in Tron areas in like the first scene, it's so many movements going on. Like Ares is fighting all these soldiers, and you need to be choreographed, because you need to find who is who and who is fighting who, and it need to be in style, in a cool way that they did so good in the previous film, Legacy. So we worked so much to get it right, and of course they did so much before training and to get everything. So we spent a lot of time with the picture editor to make that something special. So he cut a scene, and I did the sound design for it, and I set it back because I felt that was a little bit, the rhythm wasn't feeling right, and then he got it back, and he had some questions and some ideas from me. So that was a long collaboration. But I think it's so important, as you said before, that we would so nice to start as early as before we start shooting, as like in previous, and we often do kind of some previous on big films. We do sound design on previous as well. So, but I always said that like it's like 4 places you can do really good sound design, and that's before we start really doing sound design. It's like before in the script, when you do like the previous, you're planning everything, and of course shooting to be sure that you have all the elements and everything in that you need. At the last place you can really do good sound design is actually in the editing, that the collaboration with the picture editor and the composers and me, that's like there you set the pace and set the story and the storytelling. Like what I do after is like fine tuning and making mixing and everything better, but you need to set the film in the edit. So that's how it is. But it's so many. It's what the whole Tron is, a big choreography. Sorry, Norwegian, but it's everything is so well planned, and it's so and it helped us a lot. So yeah, thanks.
I mean, rhythm is, since you're in music conservatory, it's one of the main 3 pillars of music: harmony, melody, and rhythm. And when it comes to film, rhythm is mostly what takes you through pacing and propulsion, and therefore movement. So, I mean, as a composer or songwriter, you're always constantly thinking about rhythm, because it's what will set the whole pacing of a scene, basically. I would, I mean, there's even examples of scores recently and years ago that are only rhythm, like The Studio, for example. It's mostly drums, or Birdman, the movie a few years ago, which did the same thing with the same composer. Um, and it's still a very effective score because it takes care of precisely that, like the movement, the propulsion. So I would say in songwriting, for example, in projects that are musicals that are early enough, it's a discussion that you have very early, because whatever the tempo of the song will determine the whole sequence that is going to be animated or filmed. So it oftentimes is one of the very first things, whether it is through reference songs or just through a tempo that they tell you is like it should be, you know, up tempo, or we need this to be slower scene. I would say is definitely one of the main things that people talk about in film music, or in songs for film, before you even get a brief. Is if not the first thing you have to know, definitely one of the first things you have to know is the speed of whatever you're talking about.
Rhythm in cinematography is really close to editing. Like when shooting a take, with or without sound, I keep in mind how I want the audience to interpret it. And, even if it's like a full scene or like just a movement, sometimes I have the feeling I'm already like in the editing room. I try to find a flow in my camera movement, and in my composition. And sometimes I use like the ambient sound, you know, or even like the rhythm of the dialogue, you know, to decide the length or the speed of a camera movement. And depending on the narrative, I may accelerate a tracking shot because it needs to land with impact in the edit, or slow down a transition because it needs to breathe. And it's funny because I've been doing that a lot in documentary work. Sorry, but I realize they also follow me in other formats, in commercial, feature film. Uh, it, it may sound like a bit like intuitive as a technique, but it's really about like adapting to the environment, and whether it's the reality when it comes to documentary or something we've created in a feature film or a commercial.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very opposite, because when I was a dancer, we choreographed to the music, and now, you know, so many props to, you know, the people who come in and do all the composition and the sound, because we basically create and then they have to come in and make it all make sense with sound and with music. But as far as rhythm, and I think all of us can attest to this, there's certainly a rhythm in filmmaking that doesn't even include sound, right? Like you with like the movement of like camera and the way things are edited, and there's just, I know for us, we get in and we start designing the action or doing choreography, and you get into a rhythm of it that's rhythm within the movement, and some of it makes sense, and every time, once in a while, we'll run into something that just doesn't quite make sense. We thought it would. It's like, well, this just isn't quite working. It doesn't fall within like the rhythm of what has already happened. And that's even before any sound is put into it at all. So, I mean, I would like to think that by the time they're layering in music to what we're doing, that they kind of feel that natural rhythm of what we've created without it feeling like there's too many bumps, like, well, this doesn't quite make sense. Like, how do we fix that musically or sound wise? I would be actually really curious to kind of see that process layered on to the action that we do, because we don't ever get to be a part of it. So
That's the thing. When I see the first cut or first time I see something, I just feel, I try to sense the rhythm, and I try to, because that, like the whole film is like one piece, one kind of one heart, one rhythm. So, and of course, cinematography is so important. The pace of where you can cut, and how you and how to work with the camera, with the actors, and all those things are so important. So it builds like on its own rhythm, and so I think it's very important to get that the collaboration, or like the idea often starts with the director. That's how I kind of work when I work with the composer as well. We try to, instead of doing sound there and music there, we try to find one as a one piece, and and it's all about the director and how we kind of conduct everything. But I think it often has its own rhythm when we start working from already from the set. And the other thing is, like, as you talk at you're a dancer, but we know that the best fall artist we have, that doing all the steps and footsteps inside the studio and do all these things, the best are previous dancers, because they have the inner rhythm. So doesn't need to be in sync with the picture. That's not so important. It's more to have this kind of sync with the rhythm or sync with the feel. So often Foley are a little bit out of sync of what's actually happening, but it just fits the edit and fits the rhythm and the music and everything. So we often do things that make it even hopefully better. So, but yeah.
And it's so amazing too, because like I think we talked about you know, everything there's either pre this or and post as well. And I know, Daniel, you worked on it beforehand to kind of create this music for working with EJ and all the group, to kind of create music for these action sequences that you don't even know really, because it kept changing throughout. I was wondering, like, for the action choreography, or even like what David told you about the story and putting it together, how did you approach this in a musical palette, that can work with the story that they had, that they kind of put together for you? There's no actual real visuals yet because they haven't put it together. But how did you kind of, okay, let's try to create these different sounds for these different action sequences, or these different sequences that we may or may not have?
Yeah, well, that's why whenever I talk about this project, and people are kind of shocked sometimes that I was involved in it for more than 5 years. And the reason for it is it's an original story, an original musical, not based on anything, which means we could have taken it anywhere. So when you're basing a musical on an existing IP, then there's already a story, there's already beats. Sometimes the songs are already there, like recent, for example, remakes of, I don't know, Beauty and the Beast or Snow White. The songs can be remade, but there's already an existing map. In K-pop Demon Hunters, there was no map. By the time I came in, there wasn't even a script. It was just the directors who had this amazing vision and all these ideas, but we needed to always just try to see, like, where do we start? Like, where do we take this into? So that's why the process was so long, because there's so much trial and error to think. Early on, you don't even know necessarily how many girl band songs are you going to have, or how many boy band songs, or what's going to be the order, like if it's going to be the intro song and then we need the villain's introduction, or can we wait a little bit more and give a little bit more story to the girls, or there's so many variables that I think that's why it takes so long, even if at the end there's only 7 original songs or something. As you probably know, talking to EJ and everybody else in the team, there were dozens of songs that were written throughout the 5 years, and hundreds of versions of each song, pretty much. And sometimes the versions were very different too. So yeah, it's a long process. And similarly to what we were talking with one of the first questions, being that it's a musical, a lot of the music came before the visuals. So the rhythm was kind of predefined for the animators, which is different to a lot of other projects. Like last year, I scored a short film for Illumination, but I came in when it was already fully animated. It wasn't lit, but the movement was already all there. So in those cases, when you're scoring something like that, the tempo, like we were talking, there's like a visual tempo to it, and you have to attach to that to write the music. K-pop Demon Hunters was very different. There was no rules whatsoever. We could do tempo changes in the middle of songs, which we did. And then there's other songs like Jinu's introduction, for example, where it's just him and the guitar. Well, it's like a Korean traditional instrument, but all of that needs to be choreographed down to the finger, basically, so that it feels legit. And when you're seeing it, it's because the definition is quite good. So everything had to be kind of animated exactly to what we did.
Well, one day I'm gonna have to come and listen to all the tracks that didn't make it out there because I know it's like
There's
a lot that you guys worked
4 hard
on.
drives of it. Yeah, yeah.
But and then you know what, Vincent, you know, surfers on the monstrous like waves, you know, it honestly it's so hard. That's why I'm like it's sound everything it depends on what you capture. And like you have to capture all of that, you know, it requires the mastery of like capturing it perfectly in the sense of motion. Like how do you choreograph the it's one of those things where it's unexpected, you don't know what's going to happen, but like how do you choreograph the camera to kind of move with the physicality of surfing? Like it's so difficult. Like I'm watching your doc and I'm like I don't know how he captured all this. Like it's amazing.
Um, like you know, every wave is different, and so every ride is going to be different too, and we constantly have to adapt. I guess experience is the key. Experience not only in cinematography but also in surfing, being able to read a wave and to understand a wave. Most of the time when we arrive on the spot, we try to look for those angles um, which may help telling the story we want to tell. If the wave is massive and nearly, as we say in surfing, and dangerous, you know, or otherwise, if we're more looking for some kind of a beauty moment, you know, playing with the colors and the wind, you know, slightly blowing on the top of the wave. So it really depends of what we're looking at. But once again, it's funny because it all comes to movement and it all comes to flow at some point. And after all those years shooting surfing, I understood you need to be in sync with the ocean and you need to understand where to put your camera to perfectly match the rhythm of the wave. Because if you don't and you just try to shoot in order to get something, it will not look natural. And when that doesn't look natural or it look pretty forced, you lose all the emotion and all the beauty of the ocean and all the beauty of surfing. And I know it might sound like a bit like mystical, but when you're shooting in the water, for example, holding a water housing and just moving with your body, basically you're kicking with your fins. If you try to force in the ocean, not to be blind with the wave and the action and the talent, whether it's a professional surfer or a stuntman, basically you're going to ruin everything. But if you think that rhythm, that perfect sync with the ocean, that's the moment where you get like that shot, you know, the one actually like your director or producer are paying you, you know, to do so. And sometimes it takes a while, you know, you can spend like hours in the water and just get like one shot and like on every job, you know, sometimes like, you know, you're on a good roll and you're going to be like perfectly in shot the whole day and you're going to get like that flow and shot like those great moments, you know, with the talents you have in the water. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about the flow, literally.
So you would say that the ocean is the worst and the best person to work with in Hollywood.
Yeah, I can say that the ocean and
So,
the ocean and the people living under the ocean
yeah.
also sometimes.
Well, you know, I am so excited. Can you guys tell me for each of you, because I'm a big fan of all of you guys and the work you guys put out there, because it is like I love watching everything that you guys have done. And can each of you share a moment from your careers that you found movement like kind of perfectly fused in with watching the final product, where you're watching and you're like, I killed it, I nailed it, this is perfect, like or like you know a moment in your career, not only this what you worked on currently, but just in general, like when you watch the final product, you're like, chef's kiss, like I love this.
There's so many things and so many films that I worked on, but I had this documentary I did. Also, we're talking about documentary and shooting film. And I did a documentary called Songs of Earth, and Songs of Earth is about following following the director's father around in the mountain for a year and capture all the sounds and capture everything he senses. He just walked in the mountain in Norway for a year, and he's 85 years old. And I think the moment because we every day when they start shooting, they kind of sat down in the environment, in the nature, and just listen to what they heard, and because what they want to capture on microphone. I was there a couple of times. I was doing most of the post-production. I went out and did recording, but also had a recordist that followed the father, and the thing was he had his own rhythm because he walked and had his own rhythm, and that was amazing. And suddenly there was one morning they just sat on a glacier, and there was a crevasse, and they heard a rhythm, and it was like they didn't know where it from, and then they found out that the rhythm was like under the glacier. So they lowered the mic like 100 meters down, and then they found out there was a rhythm there. They didn't knew what it was. We never found out. It was not not water drip. It was something that was gung, gung, gung. And they had the same rhythm as the father was been walking for a year. So the whole nature and the human and the nature, and we of course we took all the sounds that we recorded, and we sent it to a symphony, like a composer that did music that inspired what we kind of captured when we was recording, and everything was kind of ended up in one nice thing that the people that kind of play the instrument, they listen to the sound, and we try to capture everything at the place where the father was walking around. So with the whole experience and everything turned out very nice. So that was a great experience when it comes to motion and nature and sound and music. Yeah.
No, Hiro,
Thanks.
Jahnel, if you want to spoil the ending, that'd be great. But I don't know when this will post, but that's really a question for me. So
I mean,
I think Netflix has our place bugged
Yeah.
because they like seem to know as soon as
We say-
something goes
and it-
out, they're on it.
I mean, we're particularly proud in Volume 1, the big oneer in the Maxi that came out. That was pretty amazing for us to have so much put together with that. And even, I mean, you guys were talking about even with the waves and like being able to capture it with the camera. It was important for our cameraman to be able to do it as well. We had an incredible Steadicam operator, Nick Mueller, just he's a dancer too. So when he watches us put this choreography together and he goes through it with us, he's like doing a whole dance with camera just to dance around what we're doing. I mean, if you watched any of the BTS stuff, you can see the camera operator. She's running behind all the camera operator and the grips, trying to keep everybody safe and keeping everybody in order. But it was like a big dance for all of us to be able to accomplish this big sequence. And I mean, another one that I'm very proud of is, I mean, we did Cobra Kai. There was a big oneer in that. Doing big oneers are like stuff that's really cool for us. In season 2 of Cobra Kai, there was a high school fight. It was a big fight. There was only supposed to, the directors wanted like, let's put like a few guys in it. We'll do this little oneer in the hallway. We ended up using every single cast member, and it ended up being one of the longest oneers that we did, and being able to kind of put all that together and have it come out. I think it took us 7 takes to actually get it, because you're going on a oneer, you can't cut. If you mess it up, you got to start all over again. So it's but I think we did it within 7, and it was super exciting for everybody to get that done. So that was exciting to be a part of.
There was a show I did about 5 years ago that is still very special to me. It's called Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts. It's a DreamWorks show that's on Netflix. And I got the opportunity to do both score and songs, which I love doing both. But many projects I only end up working on one of the two sides because, again, they're very different. Scoring usually happens much later. Songs oftentimes come earlier. So it's difficult to stay on a project long enough to do everything. But on Kipo, I had the chance, and I would say the ending of season 1, which is like season 1, episode 10, it's like 12 or 13 minutes of nonstop music between songs and score, just coming in and out. And still to this day, I think that's one of the more special projects I've had. And funny enough, the showrunner of that show, Rad Seacrest, is Maggie Kang's husband, who created K-pop Demon Hunters. So they're in the same world. But yeah, I would say the ending of season one of KPop, to me, musically, was like a gift, to be able to write both score, song, back into score, back into song, into the land credits. And we kind of hint on, I remember, 6 or 7 themes in just that sequence. So it was one of those things that felt like an opportunity, a gift to be able to do something like that, because oftentimes you don't get the chance to explore that much.
I love that. And especially it's like having a baby and then you get to see it come to life at the end too. Like the whole process.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, just again, just being able to just intertwine everything was pretty special and unique.
Vincent, what would you say is that big moment for you? That kind of it movement, like the sound and everything was just perfect chef's kiss for you, the final product of sound and movement and cinematography.
It was almost a reveal. A few years ago, I got contacted by French electro musician. He's a really famous DJ from the French Touch movement. And for his upcoming album, he wanted to record the sound of the giant waves of Nazareth. And the guy had barely like zero knowledge about surfing and not even about like Nazareth, which is the mecca of big wave surfing in the world. And the idea seemed so crazy, we decided to do a documentary about it to document his adventure. Not only following him, through the wave, because he wanted to set up microphone on the surfer, on the surfboard. We used some buoys, and on those buoys, we put some waterproof microphone too, just to get the sound of the ocean, crashing on it. But he also wanted to be in the water with the surfers, just to make sure what he was recording was actually like the reality. And our goal was to capture every action from all angle possible, just to make sure we have the footage matching with the audio. I'm not going to get too technical, but we had to sync everything through time code, etc., etc., etc. And when we all start watching the first sequences, it was a huge shock because, as I said before, like back in the days, I was really focusing getting that shot and putting the right music on top of it. Then we start playing with sound design. But when it comes to surfing and action, it was really difficult to get the sound. And for the first time ever, we had the proper sound. And you look at the footage and you see a huge wave breaking on a surfer. And the sound is so terrifying. It's a proper thunderstorm, And when the guy is underwater, well, like usually underwater, you think you don't hear anything. You keep hearing noise, You keep hearing like his, like convulsion or even like some shock coming out from his board, or just like his body almost being demanded. It was like totally crazy. So from my perspective, I was like, wow, we finally get it, We have it. We have like the sound and the picture. We can make like a proper like a real film for once. But for the surfer, it was even more like a surreal experience, because when those guys are surfing, they so focus into the technique, into making the wave, coming back to the shore safe. They don't really realize what happened around them in terms of sound. And every time we show them a sequence, they were like, oh my God, there's no way I will go back out there one day. I had no idea it was that terrifying. They were all telling us, oh, it's even worse with the sound. It's sound. So yeah, that was definitely like the moment, when I had the feeling we managed to connect it together, sound and picture.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned shark, I was like, "What?" What? My eyes just got wider. I'm like, "Oh, there's more." The crashes of the waves, but in general, everyone is just fantastic. But I did hear from everyone except Jahnel. I want to hear your moment because Hiro did mention it, but I wanted to hear, maybe is there a moment for you too?
I think for me, honestly, it goes back to the very first movie that I ever did, and it was the first Avatar. And we had spent, I was on the project for 3 years, similar to you, Daniel, where it's a passion project, right? Where you're like, okay, I believe in this thing that we're doing, and I think it's going to be great, but I don't know what it's going to be on the tail end of it. And I remember the moment of sitting in Chinese Grauman's Theater, and it was, it finished my first movie, first screening, and as soon as like everything came alive on the screen with the music, and I remember being so moved throughout that entire film. And not because I'd just spent 3 years of my life on it, but I think part of it was being in a motion capture volume where it's visually bare, right? Like everything is very bare bones motion capture because you're having to sort of imagine everything that you're interacting with because there's no environment. The environment's all digital. So that was a moment for me of seeing sort of the magic of it all come together when I finally got to see Avatar for the first time. It was a really like magical thing. And, the music and sound is what really puts you in. We can only do so much visually, all of us, right? Like putting it on the screen and all of that. But like when the sound comes in, it really puts you and makes you feel something to a much deeper level. So yeah, for me, it was my very first movie. I have to go back all the way to, yeah.
Well, it looks like that's all the time we have for today. You guys are all fantastic. I love your work for all of each of you because, you guys, I cover artisans, so it's amazing to witness, like, and to hear you guys talk about the work that you guys have done with the stories I've watched. Thank you guys to thank you to our panelists, Jahnel, Hiro, Tormod, Daniel, and Vincent. Thank you for being here today to discuss your incredible work. So thank you guys. And also thank you to Impact 24 PR for putting this panel together, and for all of you watching for this event. So I'll see you guys next time, but thank you everyone for being here.